Hello, this is VMR Ogremen, your instructor. Now that we are done with the forms and HTTP request handling, our next lesson will be about models and database handling. If we go to the CodeIgniter documentation, it says that model are PHP class that are designed to work with information on your database. So that is what we are going to do in this tutorial. We will be working with the information from our models to the HTTP request to our database. Before we continue, we need to first make sure that Apache and MySQL is running. So we need to start MySQL since we will be handling database information or connection. Okay. Now let us first create a model for this registration page. What we will do is go to the models folder. Inside the application folder, go to the models folder and create a new file. Since this is a user data, we need to create a user model. User. Then we will go to the example. Let us copy this one. Okay, and let us copy this one for security. Let us change the class name of our model and also the file name of our model. User model, and we need to set the properties of our user. So let us just copy the properties of the user, which in this case we have the name, address, username, and password. Public username, and we will create a method for inserting the data to the database. Let's name it create. And let us just copy the sample in the model. Let's see, insert entry. Let's copy this one. And let us set the data in each property. Name is equal to, all we need to do is get the value from the post data. In this example, since this is the name, we need to get the value from the input, post, and set this to name since the name of the input is name. And for security, set the second parameter to true. Next is the address. Set this to address since the name of this input is address. Same is true to other data. Okay. For the password, we need to create a hash for this because it is not secured for us to be storing the real password inside the database. So we need to hash this. For this example, I will be using MD5, but you are free to use your hash generator. It can be SHA-1. So matter of fact, let me use SHA-1 for this. Next, we need to create our database and our table. To do that, let us go to the phpMyAdmin and create a new database. I will name this as USRMGMT. Then I will create a table. I will name it as users. And I will set the number of columns to 5. First, I will set the ID. Auto increment. Let this be the primary. Then the name. I will set this one as varchar. Then set this to 150 in length. Then the address, I will set this to text. And username, I will set this to varchar. I will set this up to 50. And then the password, I will set this up to 250. And I will save this one. Next, let us set the configuration of our application. Let us go to the application folder, to the config, and to the database configuration. In here, let us set the host name to localhost and username to root, since that is the default username for phpMyAdmin. And let us set the password to blank, because in my local machine it is blank. Then let us set the database to USRMGMT, but it depends on how you name your database. In my case, I named my database to USRMGMT, so that is what I will be using in this example. Then let me close that. This one too, and this one. The next step is inserting the data to the database. Now, before we go on, we need to learn something about this first. To do that, let us go to the documentation of CodeIgniter. And let us go to the query builder. Then inserting data. This is the example of our code. This is the DB insert. The first parameter is the table, and next is the object. So in that case, we need to set this to the table. Since we have created our database and our table, we need to set that to the table that we have created, which in our case, it is the users table. Then let us set this to users. And now let us try if this is working. What we need to do is go back to the user's controller and let's delete this. Before we can use this model, just like the URL helper, we need to load first the model. What we need to do is go back to the models in the CodeIgniter documentation and let us see how to load the model. In this example, this is how we load the model. Let us copy this code and go back to our user's controller and paste it here. And insert the name of our model. And then we need to use that model, this, and the model name, and then the method for the insertion, or the method that we want to use from the model. In our case, we need the create method. Let us check if this is working. Let us go back to the registration page. Let us set the address. Username will be 1 and password is 123456. 123456. Then click register and we have an error. We have an error because we did not load our database, because everything from helper to models needs to be loaded first before we can use it. To do that, we need to load the database first, like this. Then we have to copy it at the top of our code where we are going to use this db insert. Let us check if this will work. Let's go back. 1 2 3 1 2 3 and register. As you can see, there is no error. It is a blank page right now, and we are in register validation page. To check if we have successfully inserted the data, we need to go to the phpMyAdmin, then click the users and confirm we have a data. Now, let us go back to our code. This is good, but just like our other helpers and models, we can auto-load this. Let us go to the config folder and auto-load. Let us go to the helper. Libraries. Libraries and auto-load database. Now, we deleted the code for loading the database. Let us check again if this will work. Go back. 1 1 1. Then click register again. If it is working, then we are good to go. And no error. Let us check the users and it is working. Now we are done with inserting the data. Let us now try to create another page wherein all the data of the users that are registered is listed. For example, let's create another method. Let us name it as all. Let's just add some space here. And let us set the page title to all users. Then let us add a view. All users page view. Let's copy this one. Then let us go to the views folder and let us duplicate this one. Name it to all users page view. Let us delete this. And let us create a table. This is table header. Let us set the name, then the address, then the username. And let us add another column for action. Let us add another table row here. Then add table data for the name test. Let us add a link in our header. Let's say here, let us add all users. Just set this to capital U. And let us set the parameter to users, controller, and all method. Let's check. Go back to the home page. We have here all users, and this is our page. But first, we need to set the table class to table for that to look good at least. Then we need to get the data from our database from here to be viewed in here. As you can see, we only have test data. So we need to create another model. Another method for getting all the data. To do that, we need to create another function. Let's name it to get all. No parameter. And set this db-get. This is all that we need for our query. All we need to do is insert the table name, then insert the query to and add, then add a variable, then return the result. This is the code for returning the result from the database. Now let us go back to the user's controller. And in here, let us create another variable. Let us name it to all users. Then let us load this model. Let us use this. Then since we want to use the getAll method, we need to change this to getAll. Then we have to pass this in the then we have to pass this to the view. What we need to do is add another element, add index for that element, and the value for that element, which is all users. Okay, let us just arrange this. Okay, and that is much better. Page title, and we added the all users variable and the data from all users. Let us go back to the user page view, all user page view. Let us first check if we have a data inside the all users view. I will be using this tag and add the PHP tag, and just like the last time we used printer, and let us check if this is working. Let us refresh, and now we have all the data from our table. Next that we are going to do is we have to insert the data inside this table row. Since we are expecting more than one data, what we need to do is to create a loop using for each. I will copy the variable, all users variable, as okay. In this example, we are looping through all users variable, and then we are passing all the data element from the all users variable to the user variable. So now let us check what will happen if we run this code. Let us go back to our browser. Let us refresh this. As you can see, since we have two rows in our table, this one and this one, we have two rows that was added to our table. Now, next, we will replace this test data with the data that is in our database table. What we need to do is go back to our code, and since it is confirmed that we have a data in our table, we do not need this code here. So let us remove this and replace this data with what is in our database. Since every element is inserted to the user variable, every time we iterate, we can use this. And then, since this is a standard class object, we can use the properties of this standard class object. Then use that to access the value. Copy this one and replace address, username, And for the action, we do not need something in there yet. Then let us check. I will refresh, and now it is working. Now let us add actions for every row of this table. For example, we want to have a link for viewing the data of this particular row or particular user. We will add a link there, and also we will add edit and add delete. Let's go back. Let's check. Now we have these links in every row. If we want to view, we will just click that and we will have the data of this particular user. Just like edit, we can edit the data of this particular user, and delete to delete the data of this user. Next, let us create a view for viewing the data of a user. What I will do is just duplicate this all users page view to user page view. Then just create a very simple HTML for showing the data of this user. In this example, let us create a paragraph tag, and let us add a strong tag and set the name, and let us just add some test data in here. Username, let us go back to the user's controller. Now let us create another method for viewing the profile of the user. Let us create a profile method. Then in the profile method, we will add a parameter for ID, and then that ID will be the one that we will be using for retrieving the data. Then we will load this model again, since we will be getting the data from the database. We need the user model. Next is use the user model and get the data and insert the ID variable inside the get method in the user model. Next, we have to create this method in the user model, get and the ID. Then let us copy this one. Instead of get, we will be using the get where, and set the table and add another parameter for the where clause. So first, let us set the name of the field that we will be using for the where clause. In this example, it is the ID, and the value is the ID here, just like that. This will be the where clause. For example, the query will be like this: select all from users table where ID is equal to whatever the value of the ID that will be passed in this model or in this method. Okay. Next is, since we know that there is only one row that will be returned from the database, we do not need the result method. We can use the row method to get only the row that is being passed. Then let us go back to the user's controller and let us add another variable as user. Whatever the result from this method will be inserted into the user variable. And then let us copy this view. I think this is much better. Let's copy this view and insert here, and let us change this to user, since this is what we are going to use. And our view should be user page view. Then let us go back to the all users page view, and then let us edit this link for the profile view. Let me copy this one. And first, let us echo the base URL. Of course, since our link is in the user's controller, we need to set the user's controller and the method, which is profile. And then let us add the user ID. Let us check if this is working. Let us go back to the view. Let me refresh. Let us check the page source. And now it is working. This is the ID of the first data of the first row, and this is the ID of the second row, the 1 and 1, 1. Okay. Next is, let us check if this is working. Okay. Let's go back to user page view. This is the test data. This is the profile. We set the page title to profile, and then we pass the user's variable to user page view. Now let us change the test data to the real data of the user. Since we have passed the user variable to this view, we can use now the user variable. For this, we need the name. But first, we need to echo this. Replace this one. Address. And user name. Now let us check if this is working. Refresh and click view. 1, Tacloban City, username 1. 1, Tacloban City 1, username 1, 1. Okay. Now we are done with our viewing of profile. Next will be the editing of the profile. Let's go back to the all user page view. First, we need to edit this, the link for the edit action. let us change this to edit. Of course, since we created this link, we also need to create another method for editing. Let me copy this and change the method name. Let's change the page title to edit profile. Then let us create another page view. Let us duplicate the registration page. Let us name this as edit user page view. Let us delete the confirm password. Then let us change the button to edit user. And for our action, we need to create another method. Okay, let us check if this is working. Refresh. Edit profile. Name 1. Of course, we need to change the view. Edit user. Refresh again. Check. And now we have the form for editing the profile of the user. Okay, let's go back to the code. Edit user. And then let us change this to text. Next, we have to create this method in our user's controller. That we can also copy this one. Edit, validation, then edit, and then we can set the ID. Let's go back to the edit user page view. But first, let me close the other tabs. Of course, it is much better if we show the value of each input. Since we already have a previous data from the particular user, we can show it here. Okay, to do that, let us insert value inside. Then let us add a PHP tag. Since we are passing the user's information into our edit user page view, we can access that just like how we access the object. To do that, let's just insert user, then add the field. Since this is for the name, we need to add the name field, and I need to add PHP here also. Then let us just copy this and use it in here also. Then let us change this to address, this one to username. Then let us check if this is working. I will refresh this, And now we have the default value for each field. Okay. Now, if we submit this, of course, there will be an error because right now, there is no edit method in our user model yet, which we are going to do right now. Let's go back to the user model. Let us add here a new method. Let us name it edit. Then let us add a parameter for the id. In here, we need to add a variable named data array. This data array will be the variable that will be holding the data that we are going to pass to the database. Let's create an array here. For the first data, we need the name. And of course, to get the data that we're going to submit to the server, we need to use the input helper. To do that, we use this input post and then the name of our field that we are going to insert here. And of course, for security, we set this to true. Next is the address and the username. For the password, I did not include it yet in our tutorial because I think it is much better if we do that later. Oop, there is something wrong in here. So let us edit this. It's supposed to be equal and greater than sign. And of course, after setting the data array, we need to access the database. And we need to save the data. The first parameter is the table. Next is the data that we're going to pass to the DB helper or the database helper. So, since we have the data here, all we need to do is to just pass the whole variable. And then we need to set the where close, which in our case this is the ID, and it should be equal to whatever is passed in our parameter. Now let us go back to our view. Let us try to test this. Let's say I will add number 1 in here also, or I'll add letter S, and I will try to save this. As you can see, there is no error, but let us check if the data has been added to the database. And there, we have the correct data. The next thing that we are going to do is for the delete. We need to set a delete for us to delete a single record. To do that, of course, we need to set the link for the delete. Let us open the view for all. Then let us add this. Copy and add it here. All we need to do is to edit the link, which in this case it should be delete. Okay, then let us add new function here. And the parameter should be the ID. And in here we need to add the model, and of course we need a new method. Okay, now let us add this delete method. Let us go to the user model. Let's add a new function and let us name it delete. And this is very easy, and just like the update, all we need to do is use the delete and specify the table. No need for data array, and we need the where close, where ID is equal to whatever the ID that is being passed here. Okay, now let us try to check if this is working. Let us go back to the list of users. Let us try to delete this row. As you can see, there is no error, but of course we need to test it first. Let's refresh, and the first record has gone. Before we go on with our video, I think we need to add a link here for adding new users. To do that, let us try to add another link just at the top of the table. Let me copy this. Let us add the link, which is register, and of course we need to set the text for the link. Let us check. Now we have a link here. It is now easier to access the registration page. Before we close this tutorial, I think we need to add another process every time we create or update a data. For example, if we add a new data here and click register, it is going directly to a blank page, but it is working. All we have to do is we need to redirect this to other page. For example, after adding new user, this should be redirected to the list of all user. Okay? Now, what we are going to do is we need to use another helper, which is the URL helper. But since we will be using this in almost all of the pages, we need to auto-load this helper. As you can see, it is auto-loaded already. So what we need to do is go back to the user's controller. Inside of this, every method that we have created, we should be able to check if, or we should be able to return, or we should be able to check if the method that we have run is successful. Okay, for example, for create method, we should be able to return the insert ID. Okay? If there is a result from this insert ID, automatically it will be considered as true. So in our controller, we need to add an if statement, and this method call should be inside the if statement. So here's what is happening. Once the method returns the insert ID, which is the ID of the user that we have inserted, this will trigger as true. Now if it is true, then automatically it will execute whatever is inside of the if statement. In this case, if the registration is successful, then we need to redirect the user to the user's controller /all. The use of the redirect function is for the client to be redirected to other page, which in this case we will be redirected to the user's /all page if this is true. Okay, let us run a test. So what we are expecting is after the registration, we will be redirected to the list of user. Register, and here it is. It is working already. Now let us do the same with edit. Okay, let us add an if statement. Let's copy this one. Let us change this with the edit method, and it should stay the same. Let's try. Let us add s or 2, and after this we will be redirected to the list of the users. Something went wrong because we did not edit the edit method yet. So let us go back to the edit method in our user model. Okay, in here we need to return this db affected rows. Okay, so if the update is successful, this will return the number of affected rows, and of course it will be interpreted in if statement as true. Okay, let us try again. Let us add another number, let's say 1. So we're expecting that we will be redirected to the list of users. Edit user, and now it is working. Okay, now for the delete, the same, we will be returning the affected rows. And of course, for the controller, we need to add the if statement. Let us change this to delete. Let's refresh. Let us try to delete this data or this row. And same, that will happen. After clicking delete, we will be redirected to the list of users. Okay, I will click delete, and it is working. Okay, before we end this, as a bonus, I will be adding a very simple JavaScript, so that we need to see a confirmation first before we delete something in our list. To do that, let us go to the delete link. I will add here on click. Then I will add an if statement. Then I will call the confirm function of the JavaScript. Then I will add the text which will be shown to the user. Are you sure you want to delete? In here we need to set the not. If the user did not confirm deleting the row, it will return null, or it will do nothing. But if the user confirm, automatically the data will be deleted. So let us check. I will refresh this. If I will cancel, this data will not be deleted. Oops. This should be false, not null. Let us try again. Cancel. Nothing happened. But if we OK or confirm, of course it will be deleted. And now we have no data in our user list. I think that is all for this tutorial. Thank you, and I hope you learned something from this.